Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming out this afternoon. It's a glorious day, and we really appreciate you being here. If you're from a high school, can you raise your hand for me? Great, thanks. If you're from a college, can you raise your hand for me? Great. It's great to see you all here today. We're here to talk about a very niche topic of cybersecurity. We've brought in a variety of speakers for you today that cover a gamut of the field to show the breadth and depth of what's available in cybersecurity. We've got recent graduates who are doing phenomenal in their field, and we've got some people that have graduated a little while ago who are here to talk about their discoveries and journeys and teach you a little something about what they know from cybersecurity from their field. My name is Gene Kingsley. I am relatively new here at Springfield Technical Community College. I'm the new cyber range manager. I'll be the guy that's going to help get the Union Station facility started for the range activity. In partnership, you might have seen the slides that were rotating around as you were coming into the room. That's Cyber Trust. They're one of our partners. They're working with us to help us staff the SOC Center, the Security Operations Center, with students. They're working with the MSSP partners, the professionals, to help bind that together. And in the back, we have Max Faithy. Max, you want to raise your hand? Max is with Mass Cyber Center. He is a program manager. He's the guy. So if you want to talk about anything that's happening in the state with cybersecurity projects, Max is the guy you want to chat with. Thanks for being here today. So my background, before I came to STIC, I worked in the energy market, the insurance market, finance market, healthcare market, all in cybersecurity. So if you want to know a little bit about those fields, I'm happy to talk to you later about that. Find me offline. I'm also the Special Vice President for InfraGard National Members Alliance. It's a special partnership with the FBI. We work with them to help with private sector outreach. So when they find new intelligence that they want to share with the community, they typically share it as one of the channels through us, and we bring it out to the private sector. There are 38,000 members across 50 states. We're in all the fields. So as you graduate and you're looking for those professional organizations to belong to, ISACA, ISC Squared, or now it's ISC 2, and InfraGard are the top three I'd recommend to all of you. I want to give out some special thank yous today. I want to thank President John B. Cook and his cabinet for the privilege of hosting us here today at STIC in this nice conference room with this great view of the city. I want to thank the faculty supporting this initiative, Brian, Jason, Andrew, Eileen, probably a few others that I didn't see walk in today, but thank you all for being here today and supporting us. Thank you to the high school administrators and the faculty there for arranging the high schooler visits today. It's phenomenal that you're all here and interested in this program. I want to thank the presenters and the panelists who are volunteering their time with us today, which is, you know, in today's day, that's pretty deep that they're here to volunteer that effort with us to help share some of their knowledge with all of you. Well, I want to thank the vendors for being here as well today. So over here on your left, you have Wally Computer Associates. And over here on the right, we have Entree Technologies and Arctic Wolf. All three of them are interested in meeting with you and getting to know you. Entree and Wally, if you guys have resumes, they're willing to do resume reviews with you and some interviews as well. If you're interested, just see them at any point during the show. They're both very friendly individuals, and they've been here serving this institution for decades. We appreciate that. So for the next 2 hours, what are we going to go through? We're going to explore the various aspects of cybersecurity, the current threat landscapes, emerging trends, the real-world perspectives from professionals in the field, and advice from lessons learned from the recent graduates. One of the individuals I neglected to thank earlier was obviously our special agent here from the local FBI office, who's going to talk about some of that with you today. And of course, Mr. Arnold, Professor Arnold, coming out from Boston to chat with us all today about a really unique initiative. So to that end, let me introduce Mark. So Mark is a highly experienced cybersecurity expert with more than 25 years of professional history, including 8 years in leadership roles, spanning diverse industry sectors. He has built or led security engineering, security operations centers, advanced threat and entire security programs at Fortune 500 companies. He holds an electrical engineering degree. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mark Arnold up here, please.
welcome to all of you all who are attending today. We have about 20 minutes to run through a whole bunch of slides, so I'm going to get right into it. I want to talk for a few moments about this topic I didn't know, underserved communities in gray zone crosshairs. How did we get here? How did I get here? My name is Mark Arnold. I work for a company called Laris Consulting, LLC. We break stuff, we break into stuff, we cut through fences, we cut through wire to get to our targets. We do all of that. Red team, purple team, penetration testing. But I'm not going to talk about any of that today. If you're interested, catch me after the fact. We are very strong in the DEF CON community. Our founders helped start B-Sides, if you're familiar with B-Sides. So we're very deep in the community, security community. I've been in cybersecurity for 20 plus years doing X, Y, and Z. I'm trained also in Semitic languages, so many years in Hebrew, 30 years of Hebrew, Ethiopic languages, which was also Semitic language, Arabic, and a host of others. I also have a deep roots in the African religious diaspora and studying those influences across the diaspora. And that positions me for the research I'm going to talk about a little bit today, to understand the intersection of cyber war. So we talked about, Gene talked about the range of cybersecurity opportunities. I'm going to specifically be talking about the intersection of cyber war, policy, religion, and race on communities of color or underserved communities. So I said all of that to say that the sum total of our experiences, they matter along our cybersecurity path. So it doesn't matter where you've come from, where you started. It's these collection of experiences that will prove us well in our cybersecurity journeys. Which brings me to this slide here. The genesis of this conversation, of this talk, started here in 2019 at a conference called CyberWarCon. It is now my favorite conference. At the time, in 2019, I was out of work. I was passing resumes around, getting my resume resorted, and I said, I'll just take a flight to DC and find a conference. And that conference happened to be CyberWarCon. The woman in the slide, her name is Renee DiResta. Renee DiResta is a well-known technology, but her current focus is on disinformation, information operations, influence campaigns, and tracking those who are carrying out those campaigns. She works at Stanford Internet Observatory, SIO. Anyone familiar with that, with SIO in the room? If not, I see a few hands. If you're interested in things that are cyber war, information ops, influence ops related, I recommend that you visit that site. Stephanie gave a talk called Cabra in 2019 at the CyberWarCon as the keynote. Cabra is an allusion to the three-headed Greek mythological beast, and she was talking about three information influence campaigns attributed to Russian cyber hackers. You'll see to the right of that slide the hashtag Jesus. At the time, that hashtag Jesus was being used to deceive and to draw in and to influence folks to click through and become a part of these campaigns. And so the point of some of the things that she was talking about was how information is generated and how that information then is used and repackaged to draw in engagement, consumption of tweets, consumption of blogs, consumption of these information nuggets that are being put together by troll farms, and in particular these Russian syndicates that are putting up these signs. So this particular slide has a website, a marketing campaign called Black Matters US. It is a false site, but it garnered many much engagement. Many folks began to like this site, and this site became used to attract folks to events that weren't real events. So that site, false site, was generated to encourage and to engender connection and consumption, which then led to real community infiltration, right? So we're trying to get folks to buy into the information, and then they're pulled into these events that aren't really real. And so we have these events that, like the curious case of the Russian Lives Matter. Russia's disinformation campaigns are targeting African Americans, and virtual hatred, how Russia tried to start a race war in the United States. Again, false narratives being generated to draw in consumption and to influence community infiltration, to say, yes, I'm going to join in on that sentiment, even though those who are consuming and clicking on these tweets aren't aware that they're clicking on false narratives, but being drawn in. This is also known as gray zone warfare. So this is the gray zone in the title. This slide was composed by a fraternity brother of mine who used to work at the Pentagon. He was the deputy of cyber science and technology, both there and at DHS. He's been looking at similar ways of asymmetric war without war. How can we affect intended outcomes without having a kinetic conflict? And so gray zone is described as the space in between peace and war, in which state and non-state actors are engaging in competition for attention, drawing folks into these false narratives. It's just propaganda repackaged, right? 1980s we had Cold War era, 1990s we had the post-Cold War era, the 2000s we had post 9/11 era, and then 2010 beyond, we've got gray zone warfare, which draws upon psychological, media, economic, and legal means to influence minds and hearts in a certain direction. They're doing so because humans are deceivable. We're easy to be deceived. So if you think about the recent Verizon database breach report, 85% of the intrusions that we're seeing at companies across all verticals start with human element. So CrowdStrike just recently released in their report that most attacks that we're seeing now, most exploitation that we're seeing now is malware-free, meaning they're not burning weapons. They're basically going after us. They're using influence. They're using phishing, social engineering to get that initial footprint into organizations. And so these campaigns that we're talking about start with humans because we're easy to deceive. In fact, most people will not take the trouble in finding out the truth, but so much more inclined to accept the first story they hear. That's Thucydides from the history of the Peloponnesian War. We're also seeing in our society truth's devaluation, and so there's the diminished influence and authority of traditional sources, institutions, colleges, universities. There's the encouragement online of do your own research, so everyone's doing their own research, so there's no modicum of truth. Everybody's truth is truth. And then there's the manipulation, that's the end game of all of this, the manipulation of deeply held beliefs to create conflicts among us. So there's the attempt to manipulate the masses. That's the end game. They're able to do this, these nation-state actors and influencers are able to do this because we have as individuals, we have competing sentiments. Just very briefly, are there any Patriots fans in this room? Wow, okay. Any Giants fans, New York Giants fans? Wow, 0, okay. So that's interesting. Depending on how you feel, it's really not about whether or not they can play football well. I mean, some of the sentiments are, we hate Tom Brady, so I hate the Patriots. My fraternity brothers who live closer to New Haven, they hate the Patriots because they're closer to New York, so it's a Giants thing. I get it. When you think about sentiments in the real world, in the world of conflict, that's what the nation states are targeting. That's what they're going after. They're going after the fact that we have competing sentiments. Has anybody ever liked a post on IG or Facebook or anything like that? Anybody comment on a post? Yes? Sometimes I see a very triggering post. I go straight to the comments. I don't care about the post. I want to see what's the mood, what's the sentiment in the comment section. In fact, I'm working on a piece straight to the comments, because that's where you have an understanding of what's being exploited. So the vulnerability that if we're thinking about vulnerabilities in the notion of cybersecurity, what's being exploited are these competing sentiments, right? These competing sentiments, and that's how we see the spin up of these control farms. I have a deep passion in African American religion, and so what we were seeing in some of the campaigns were unwitting participants being hired by Russian state actors. African American specialists in African American states were being hired, unbeknownst to them. They were being hired for their knowledge of the African American religious space, and basically using their knowledge of the space to help fuel the troll farms. And so this notion of not being aware, we were seeing some of those tactics being used by taking well-meaning individuals with knowledge, but using that knowledge to spin up these nefarious troll farms to carry out these influence campaigns. Well, what does a campaign look like? I have about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to run a little bit faster here. The life cycle of exploiting a sentiment. First, generate a piece of information. What is the sentiment once that information has been put out into the wild? How are people reacting to it? Am I a Patriots fan? Am I a Giants fan? Do I like apple pie? Do I not like apple pie? Find out what the competing sentiments are, and then once you know where the sides have aligned up again along the side of a sentiment, then you weaponize that sentiment, and then you amplify it on social media platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and the like. I was in a intensive week course at Harvard Kennedy School right around 2020, and I had the opportunity to speak with Peter Singer, who wrote a book called Like War, and I asked him about this problem of weaponization of lies, and is there anything that we can do as a community of cyber defenders to defend against these amplified weapons in the social media space. And he said it's a hard problem, but all of us have to lean in to some respect to be aware first and foremost of the issue and start noodling around, what are the ways to mitigate this life cycle of weaponizing a sentiment. I found a company in Tel Aviv last year. I was in Tel Aviv in June of last year. I ran into this company called Cabra. That's the dog that was in the hallway on the wall there. And Cabra is a company that is trying to be a mitigator in this conversation around amplified weaponization of false sentiments online. And so they have a platform. There are ways to do this manually, but it takes forever. And because the weaponization of lies is amplified at velocity, we need something that can move at the same pace. And so there are platforms out there that are now using and leveraging Gen AI to help mitigate these weaponization life cycles. But in the short time that I have left, I want to walk through a use case that I posed to the folks at Cabra. And this use case had to do with the AP class issue. Have you all heard about the advanced placement class issue in Florida? Yes? I see some heads nodding. My son takes some AP classes. So I asked them to seed the platform with the governor's name, DeSantis, AP classes, slavery from mid-July of 23 to August of 23. And they began to work on the platforms Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to kind of call out or curate the sentiment based on those seeds. We saw a spike on August 16th in the data that was given to them. And on August 16th, we realized that there was a march in Miami, Florida. That Miami, Florida march was used to object to Florida's stance on the teaching of certain Black history. And as soon as that march happened, there was a spike online. There was a sentiment spike online in response to that march. That shows you how quick just a simple benign piece of information, a benign event, generated 10% fake profiles. Online, the influence spread was over 214 million in particular, based on a single march in Miami. Fake profiles got spun up in reaction to it, and the reach of that campaign reached over 214 million profiles. The sentiment analysis in this slide is in reverse. So many folks were against the banning of books, the banning the banning of those AP classes. That small segment in green are those who were for DeSantis, and that small sentiment was used to spark larger, more contentious debate online. Some of that is played out here. That slavery is good. It made people better field workers, better blacksmith, better technologists. And so we see some of that spinning up online from that small portion of profiles that got spun up from that particular march. And then we see the weaponization of that narrative in this slide. So now we've got community infiltration. We've got folks lined up on other side of that sentiment, and they're now arguing with each other online. They don't know each other, but there are some for banning and curtailing what can be taught in the schools, and there are others who are saying you don't know what you're talking about. And so now, without any military, without any kinetic event, we have folks that are arguing with each other, and the narrative and the discourse becomes amplified. This last slide as well, there's more weaponization of the narrative. Some insightful things that are posted on this slide are the fact that folks again are lining up on words like woke and misinterpret. Those are being used negatively and positively. And then as we mentioned in the first slide, words like Jesus are being used for Trump to this is not a partisan talk, so don't get at me for that. But these are the words that come up in these types of information back and forth based on these outside influencers trying to divide communities. So I leave you with a call to action. I'm 1 minute over. Use your cyber powers. Understand the threat, and we've been talking about SOC, security engineering, but there are greater threats. There are other threats as well. This is one. Be informed about it. Be curious. Be vigilant, and get involved. My first year at CyberWarCon, not much representation in the room. 4 years later, there's much representation in the room, and that's very important because all of our experiences matter. And so, with that, I will conclude my presentation. Here are a few books that might be of interest to you. Lose the Information War. I mentioned Peter Singer's Like War. The one in the middle is written for high schoolers. True or False by Cindy Otis. Cindy Otis worked for the NSA. She's now retired and works for a company called NISOS, run by a friend of mine. But all of these books are important. It gives us insight into the actual issue.
Does anyone have any questions for Professor Arnold? Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Hi, I have a question. My name is Tressel Cordier. My question to you is, so we know how information is being weaponized to change the narrative, etc., but do you know what is being done on a large scale, stuff like that? I know you spoke about it a little bit, but what's hard about it is, like the quote earlier, once people hear something, they usually go with the first thing they hear. So how do we really realistically push back against that kind of thing?
So it's these companies, it's part technical, it's part sharing, knowledge sharing. So I know, my most recent trip to Tel Aviv, talking to some of the retired brigadier generals, they are building platforms. not saying that platforms are the answer, but we need to have quicker ways to detect these sentiment spread. And so they're trying to get ahead of that almost in real time. We can't get it at real time, that's the problem that you're stating. But we are seeing the evolution of these platforms to try to tackle the sentiment piece of it at real time. So that platform I mentioned, Cyabra, is not just for this problem, but they're using it for brand management at companies. You know, how do you know companies? How do you know someone's talking negatively about, you know, company X, company Y? And the way to get ahead of that is quicker detection. Just like we have detection in other areas of cyber, the quicker we can detect, the quicker we can mitigate and respond.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So I've been wondering, because with the rise of, you know, access to AI with ChatGPT and whatnot, have you noticed any like rise in, you know, weaponization of misinformation, you know, within social media spaces?
It's already happening, already being detected, and so.
Was there like a spike, or is it just kind of like static?
It's a gradual evolution of what we were already seeing before the use of the broad spread use of AI. Now we have both sides competing, right? We have the troll farms using it, and companies like Cyabra that I mentioned, others like it, are trying to keep pace, because now basically it's AI against AI. We're seeing it in that space as we've been seeing it in bad coding spaces, malware, generative spaces. Everywhere it can be applied, we're seeing it applied. Yeah.
Sir, you had a question?
Do you know of any other companies similar to Cyabra that are using AI to, I guess, get as close as they can to the real-time tracking?
The ones I can speak about are the ones I've seen in Israel in the last 6 months. So there's another company called Cobwebs that actually got bought by a company here in Nebraska. If you look at Cobwebs, you can see their story. That if there's any present I would want for Christmas, it would be Cobwebs, and second would be Cyabra. Just to be able to play and seed and get a feel of that. It's really now about using those platforms to be force multipliers. Get those platforms into more hands, and what we're seeing at Cyabra and Cobwebs are faces like yours in the room that are getting more adept at using these generative AI type platforms to accelerate mitigation and response. It's divide and conquer.
I mean, it's literally that
So
big.
if you go back, I would recommend going online to watch Stephanie's talk, Chimera. At any given time, there are information operations going on, and it is meant to sow discord, divide, cause disunity. That is what's happening for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. Ms. Jessica Garcia, a Springfield native, leads the Authentication and Access Management program at Otis Elevator with over 10 years of experience in IT and identity and access management practices. Jessica holds a Master's of Science in Enterprise Risk Management with a concentration in cybersecurity from Boston University, and specializes in authentication as well as various cybersecurity certificates. Using that experience to best deploy the class identity and access management and general cybersecurity programs, Jessica is extremely passionate about increasing diversity in STEM fields, specifically cybersecurity, as everyone is deserving of an opportunity to learn and excel. Ms. Garcia.
Jean, and again, as Jean said, thank you all so much for being here today. Like he mentioned, this is a huge passion of mine, is just preaching about what I do and trying to get more people who were in my shoes, you know, literally sitting in your seats years ago, to be able to have these types of opportunities. I'm just going to adjust the mic because I might be a little shorter than Jean. So really we're here to talk about how I built my identity in the cybersecurity practice, as well as really having a lasting impact in protecting others at the same token. So if we dive into the agenda today, we're going to just talk a little bit about me so you know kind of where I'm coming from and how I got to what I'll essentially be talking you through where I am today, as well as what a day in the life looks like. So kind of what the day-to-day can range from and what that really looks like in a deep dive into identity and access management, which may sound foreign to some folks that aren't working in these fields today. And we'll have some takeaways and summaries, some things that you can take away today that you can try and immediately go after to help you benefit your career if you are seeking out a career in cybersecurity. And then we should have time for some question and answers as well. So moving on to just a little bit about me, and I'm just going to try and take this out. So we have, as you can see, the city of Springfield. That is where I grew up. As Jean mentioned, I am a Springfield native, and I went to the Springfield Public Schools, but I've highlighted SciTech, or the High School of Science and Technology, because that was really a pivotal point in my career that grew my love for technology and ultimately cybersecurity. I had ultimately thought about pursuing a computer science career and ultimately turned to business management because at the time I said I wanted to explore something that's less hands-on technical and maybe something that is a little bit more actually closer related to cybersecurity. But I ended up going to Westfield State University, where, as you can see, myself and my daughter, I found out that I was pregnant in my last year of school and continued going until I could no longer fit in the desks in the classroom and had to quickly pivot and figure out what I was going to do to try and make this career happen now, not only for myself, but for myself and my daughter. So with that being said, I did go forward with a business management degree tying with economics. And from my perspective, that was giving me the foundational or fundamental skills that I would need to succeed in a variety of fields, regardless of what I sought after. At the time when I was in high school, I was fortunate enough to be able to take advantage of the internships that MassMutual offered for high school students. And that essentially, between being in a school that specialized in technology, as well as having this internship opportunity with MassMutual that really focused on digital technology, it helped me to really understand what the real world of IT looked like. And for some context, I was essentially able to turn on a computer and receive and send an AOL message, and that was pretty much the extent of my computer experience or what I knew about how to do anything with them. So that led me on to, essentially after I had my daughter, I started working full time, and then figured I would try and go for my master's degree, and that's kind of what you see here 5 years after I had graduated my undergrad with what would typically be an 18 to 24 month program. The way I was able to achieve that was going part-time online and utilizing tuition assistance programs so that I was able to do this with little to no cost, because at the end of the day, these programs are very expensive, and it's all about finding the best way to achieve or be able to get that education in a way that is affordable for most of America. So that's really where it started, the love for cybersecurity. I also threw this nature photo in here because it is what I enjoy doing in my spare time when I am not in the crazy world of cybersecurity, that is. So if we move into the day in the life, you'll see a lot going on in this slide, and that is intentional. So we heard Mark talk a little bit about the Verizon data breach report and a number of other incidents that just make the headlines, and it's what we're seeing every day. No matter where you get your news from, you're seeing something that's related to cybersecurity in the headlines. So as Jean mentioned, my specialty is in access and authentication. And what that essentially translates into is managing your digital identity, so who you are online. And if you think about, for example, logging into your bank account, nowadays you're not logging into your bank account with a password anymore. You're either using your face or you're using your touch screen or your touch ID, I should say. But it's no longer relying on just a password, because I won't ask you for a show of hands of the amount of people whose Facebook or social media has gotten gotten hacked because it really is just growing, and folks are like, well, how do I avoid this and what do I do? And that's really our world, is how do we protect the experience of the digital identity when they're first logging in or first trying to get in to whatever digital account a threat actor might be after. So we are kind of trying to protect that front door before somebody can get in and not letting them into our systems before it can actually happen. So I'll kind of get into the real world scenario and what all of these news articles mean as it relates to my job, but there are some standard things that I do with running an authentication program on a day-to-day basis. So we have various resources that are running our systems, designing our systems, and making sure that these systems are functional, because if they are not, then we aren't able to ensure that our cybersecurity controls and posture is fully running all the time. We're continuously learning about these types of events that are happening in the news, because at the end of the day, how we're protecting our environment is so heavily reliant on what these threat actors are doing out there and what they're using as tactics. Arnold mentioned about the user concept and being a 85% of the breaches today have the human element. So it's really being able to understand what are they doing out there and where do we need to spend our time focusing on protecting at the end of the day. There are also a number of regulations. So for example, in the European Union, you have the regulations that control data much stronger than, for example, the United States. So when you're in a job that has global relations or that's handling data that's global, that could potentially be in a country where you have to protect that data differently, you have to understand how you're going to implement your program so that you can make sure you're following those regulations, because those fines are not minimal by any means. And finally, it's getting into all of these different headlines. It's understanding really these new trends, keeping up to date with what's coming out. So if we hone in on kind of the real world scenario here, if you all remember, and hopefully none of you were staying in this MGM hotel in 2023 last year when you were locked out of your room, elevators weren't working, you could not use the slot machines. It was not a very pleasant time for customers, our patrons of the MGM Casino and Aria Resorts. They're essentially all led back to one phone call, tying back to that human element. So, picture you're at your job and all of a sudden, your digital technology help desk gets a call, and it's not you, it's somebody else that's impersonating you and saying, "Hi, I'm Jessica Garcia, and I need my password to be reset because I don't remember it." And depending on how easy that process is, it's seen as being continuously one of the number one ways that people are getting into accounts. And we like to use this term in identity and access management that you don't even have to break into an account anymore. You can pick up the phone, ask for a password, and get in. So that, I think, and we're seeing it take down companies like MGM having $100 million in fines. So how does that actually tie back to my job? So I remember when this happened because it was a Friday afternoon and I had just put my laptop down for the day, and I can remember getting a call from my boss telling me this happened and we need to understand within the next half hour if it's going to impact us, and if somebody tried to do this to us, what would our impact be? And that's typically what happens when we see exercises done at this level, is it's always going to be, how can it impact us? Are we ahead of this situation? I'm really trying to stay ahead of what they're doing out there to essentially kind of mitigate the risk as much as possible. So with all of that being said, it can range extremely, vastly throughout the day-to-day with what we're doing and where we're going. But it is, again, something that I think I find the most passionate in, because when I am there getting the adrenaline rush for trying to figure out what's going on and you're on a time ticker, I think those are some of the things that drive me the most. And certainly if it's something that sounds of interest to you, then it's something that I certainly encourage you to explore further, because there's never a dull moment and something's always changing. So as we do get into just some of the summaries and takeaways for today, I can't stress enough how many free cybersecurity resources are out there. And there are some resources out there that can essentially help you to further your education and your resume to get you these types of cybersecurity jobs. So Google offers a free cybersecurity certification. If you don't already have Google's free cybersecurity certification and you are looking for a job in cybersecurity, that is the first thing that you are going to look up on your phone, you know, when you leave today, or figure out what you need to do to start learning more to get into those programs, because it's completely free and it's something that you can use on your resume to show that you have gone out and tried to get this experience on your own and obtain these certifications that are not easy to get, by the way. And for Cybrary, it's basically what it sounds like. It's a cybersecurity library. So there are hundreds of training videos, and you know, if there are terms that you hear in the cybersecurity world, because it is like learning a new language sometimes, it can be really helpful to go through some of these videos and trainings to really understand what is being talked about and really explaining it at a 101 type of level. They also offer various certifications. So again, same thing with Google, it's completely free. Certainly go take advantage of that. You know, and online, and just very easy to get out there and kind of start to a tactical item to take away today. And then we have our Hacker 101 series that I always like to recommend, just because it's they're video lessons on web security, and it's a very different concept of what I do today. However, if you are interested in web security, they can be fun and interesting videos that give a little bit more information on some of the aspects of the hacking world and web security there. And then this kind of flows nicely into the next topic. So when we talk about tuition assistance programs, and that's what I use to get me through all of my education, this is possible in so many different careers these days. And you know, many employers are offering these types of programs. However, if you're not in a situation where your employer is offering this, that is where you really want to take advantage of the Google certifications and the Cybrary certifications, so that you can have that on your resume to get into these companies that are offering tuition assistance programs. And then you can do everything in your power to go and see what you'd like to do and take your time while doing it, because while many of these tuition assistance programs limit what they give you for the year, it allows you to take your time. And if you're a single mom like me and you really need that time and to balance out what you're doing every day, it's something that, you know, can really be beneficial if you're juggling many things, and sometimes it feels like it's impossible to go back to school or to get a certification or to really just learn in general more. And then it goes into don't sell yourself short. You know, I think it's just ties back to every single one of us is doing something in your everyday lives that relates to cybersecurity, going back to like logging into your bank account. So if you're using your Face ID, or if you've set up two-factor authentication on your Facebook and you're not going to be one of the next victims that reaches out and says, my Facebook got stolen, what do I do? Then you're already doing something right, and you're already thinking security first. And that's the first step to being successful in one of these jobs, because at the end of the day, you know, Arnold says you don't need to know everything. It's the collective minds of having the diversity in the room and not having your traditional individuals that are in these fields coming up with these solutions, but having the diverse background and not needing to know everything about cybersecurity, but coming with the willingness to continue to learn, and you'd be surprised what you can offer already. And then it kind of ties nicely into cybersecurity in our everyday lives. So, you know, one of the things that I like to do is follow some of the cybersecurity forums on Facebook, for example, because if I'm scrolling through Facebook and not necessarily watching the news, I'm seeing things that are coming out that might be in relation to what I'm doing or my field, or things that I might just want to learn more about in general. And then finally, you know, we have through all of this program, just staying tuned on what the Springfield Cybersecurity Center of Excellence is going to be offering for folks, and just staying tuned on kind of the development that it will be bringing and offering services to various programs like this. You know, I really can't stress enough that these types of programs are what got me accelerating to where I am today. And, you know, the fact that we've got people like, you know, Entar and Wally that are helping with resume review, interviews, certainly take advantage of that. Anything that you can take advantage of, you are not going to regret it. You know, especially when it comes to this field, because like I said in the beginning, there's a plethora of resources, information out there. You're all already doing the first step of being here today, which is incredible, and there are so many people in this room, and it's amazing. So I think with that being said, Jean, we might have some time for a few questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
All righty. I'll start over here, because it's the first hand I saw.
Elizabeth Gallagher. I have a question. What tools do you kind of use every day at work, such as like Splunk? What do you use?
Sure. So like security logging monitoring tools are very popular. You know, we sign all these contracts that say I can't tell you what we actually use. However, there are Splunks out there. There's the Rapid7s out there that I have used. Those are probably two that I've used in past lives that I'm most familiar with. Those are pretty much used if we have an incident that we are investigating, and you know, we need to look up the logs as it might relate to, you know, say you might have a compromised account, and you've got to check out the logs as it relates to this system, and this system, and this system, and you need it in one consolidated place. That's really going to help with some of that investigation. While our team doesn't do a lot of that, it's where we will go, at least if we need to look at our logs and, you know, essentially retaining it there. But I'm never surprised at all the other tools that are out there. I'm like, I had no idea that so many people were actually doing that. So you'll find a plethora out there, but those are a couple that I have worked with in the past. Yes?
Hi, my name is Tressel Cordier. So I have a degree in tech, a tech-related degree, but it's not cybersecurity, and my professional experience is only in finance. And so I feel like I'm at square one, basically. And so how does someone like me stand out, and, you know, how do I, you know, because the market's so competitive, I don't really know if companies are going to take a chance on me. So what can I do besides certifications?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, certifications will be helpful. But to your point, you're certainly not starting at square one, because, you know, the amount of times that I wish I spent more time paying attention to my math classes trying to justify why we need a certain product, because in cybersecurity, you don't have a real return on investment, right? Like, I can't say that I'm saving the company X amount of dollars. I'm just costing the company money and asking people to, you know, follow these processes that they usually don't want to do. So that's a huge part of cybersecurity, and trying to justify, you know, why we're spending millions of dollars on products that we're not getting a straight answer on return on investment for. So that becomes difficult, but, you know, with that background, it's helpful. And then there are many positions that will require that, like, computer science related background, that will need like development work or those types of jobs that will require that experience. You know, I think for you it might be more beneficial to then start learning about the fundamentals of cybersecurity so that you can translate those skills easily into, you know, a cybersecurity role, because, you know, I think those two together would fit really well. So certainly, you know, not level one by any means.
Thank you.
So right now, I'm currently an identity and access management intern. Yeah. And I have SOC intern experience, risk oversight experience. I have my Security Plus, and it's still, like you said, super competitive. Is there any like IAM certifications? Because I know that like SailPoint has theirs, but you have to pay like all this money for their training in order to take that certification. And like, again, like standing out with my resume, it seems like everybody has Security Plus, everybody has Network Plus, everyone has all these basic certs. I have all the experience, but it's just always like, oh, sorry, we need another applicant, you know? Is there any like IAM specific, or is it just more focusing on like right back and stuff like that?
Yeah, and that's, excuse me, such a great question, because you will find when you're looking out there at certifications for especially the paid ones, you will find ones that are vendor specific. So like a SailPoint certification or an Okta certification. Those ones, I have gotten in the past because it's been helpful in that current role. But when you're looking at prospective jobs, you may not know, the company that you're going to work for may not be using SailPoint, and they may say, oh, if only you had savvy and, experience. But what you can look at, like the Identity and Access Management Institute, the IMI, they offer a Identity and Access Management certificate. So I obtained that, and it's very much focusing on the fundamentals of identity and access management. And that just kind of separates you out when you're looking for those IAM jobs. So, Bob or Sally may have the Security Plus as well, but you've got that and you've got the IAM specific certification. So that's a great point. You're always going to want to, have those certifications in those specialized skills where you can, if you can, to try and set you apart. But definitely the Identity Management Institute would be a great one to look at for next cert.
And do you think IAM is at entry level? Because when you look at jobs, it always says like, oh, you need to have like 5+ years, 10+ years.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's tough because there are some jobs that they will want 5 to 10 years of experience. But I think really as an industry, I think it needs to be done in a better way where we're not looking at 5 years of experience in the specific topic, because being able to learn a concept but having the background that you do is much more valuable, in my opinion, than 5 years of experience, right? So it then becomes tough there. But I have seen individuals come out of college and starting at like a IAM operations. So if you're supporting, a SailPoint tool or an IAM-based tool, that you'll essentially be able to kind of start at, or at the ground floor. And also I've seen, like, I started an IT help desk in one of my internships, and that was one of the, I think, best jobs to get me up into cyber, because we dealt with everything across the sun. And just trying to take the experience and justifying as much as possible, because I always try and tell people, you might be hesitant if you've got 4 years or 3 and they're asking for 5. What else have you done in your life that can compensate for that? Because it should matter, and especially when in a job that you are willing to learn in. So hopefully that helps. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Next up, we're going to have our friends from the FBI come up and speak with us.
Afternoon, everyone. So just an apology before we get started. I'm going to be providing you a threat awareness briefing today. I'm going to try to condense something that we normally do in about 2 to 3 hours into 20 minutes. So I might not even look at my slideshow. I might go all over the place. I'm just trying to get you the content that I think is important. If you have any questions afterwards, feel free to come talk to me. I could talk about this stuff for hours and hours. But before I get into the meat of the presentation, I would just like to reiterate a concept that I've heard come up a couple times. There's been a lot of talk about your career experience really being related to your whole person and your whole identity. The FBI needs good people. And we need people who have diverse backgrounds, diverse areas of experience, and diverse ways of thinking. So, one of the things I want you to consider is that the FBI might be a great fit for you guys for a future career. We do a lot of different things. We have over 500 career tracks in the FBI. Most everyone knows about special agents. A lot of people know about intelligence personnel, but they never think about all of the other things the FBI does and all of the other roles that we fill. So, if you've got any questions about any of that, come see me afterwards, but I would encourage everybody here to look at fbi.gov/jobs for some information about what the FBI does, what roles we have, and some of the requirements you might need to have those things. So my name is Casey Anderson. I'm a special agent here in Springfield. I work civil rights crimes, public corruption, complex financial frauds, cyber investigations. I work with Bitcoin, all sorts of crypto frauds. Really, you think about it, I've probably participated in investigations related to it. And part of the reason is because out here in Springfield, we're a very small office and we just have to deal with any federal crime that comes across our desk. But what I'm going to talk about today specifically are criminal investigations or national security investigations that are common trends we see within the FBI Cyber Division. One of the things that's important to consider is that cybercrimes are not conducted by one type of person. This is what we call our cybercrime threat continuum. Essentially, this is large buckets of the type of actors we see committing cybercrimes, from criminals who just want to gain money or access vulnerabilities for some sort of personal gain, to hacktivists, so people who are committing cybercrimes to get media attention and make a very specific set of political points, spies who are working in espionage, terrorists who are using cybercrime to fund terrorist activities, and then state-sponsored actors, which we'll get into a lot towards the end. I'm going to be giving you a very high-level briefing on this stuff today because of the time constraints. But again, a reminder, if you want to know more about any of this stuff, just find me afterwards and talk to me. I love to talk about it. So look forward to doing that. The first major thing we're going to talk about is a common method of criminal activity that is used primarily for the personal benefit of an individual or a criminal organization. But one thing that is important to consider is that any of the actors you just saw could use any of these methods to exploit vulnerabilities, reach their different end goals. But generally within the FBI, we kind of break things down to a primarily criminal violation that we could charge someone under federal law in the United States, or a national security violation that is a foreign actor that we might have to disrupt that activity through other methods. Business email compromises are used by both actors, but would primarily be handled by criminal agents. So what's a business email compromise? Essentially a scam where someone inserts themselves in the chain of communication, often using social engineering, to redirect funds from a company by masquerading as an email that is a legitimate email from the company. Email account compromise would be a more sophisticated method where some sort of tool is used to gain access to an official email, but we kind of talk about them all together because the methods are really the same. The scam is usually carried out by people who are leveraging the trust put into our cybersecurity systems. So one of the ways the FBI really works to prevent these crimes from occurring is providing education. There are people in this room that you have already heard from who know more about the security methods you need to do to protect yourself than I do. But what you've heard so far is good advice if you follow basic cybersecurity protocols and also have good methods of communication within businesses or organizations where you can check on the legitimacy of things like requests for funds. A lot of these vulnerabilities are minimized. So how does a business email compromise work? First thing, you have an intrusion that occurs. So that can be done through social engineering or data breaches, more complex tools like keyloggers or malware, but the vast majority of these crimes are done through social engineering. The second step is some sort of money request. We say wire because it's the most common. Somebody taking money into an escrow account for a retail transaction or a realty transaction isn't likely going to say, yeah, let's do it in Bitcoin. But depending on the area that is being targeted, there are all sorts of different requests for finance that occur, and that is the area where the threat actor will target. So you see a lot of different methods, whether it's from faxes and phone calls using official numbers, spoofing phone numbers to make it look like they're from an organization, email account takeovers, or just creation of emails that look really similar and people are not being really careful about who they're contacting. And then the final thing is the movement of funds to a money mule network. Money mule networks are organizations of people who may not know that they are actually involved in a financial fraud scam and are used to commit money laundering. One of the most common things we see are people who are involved in romance scams. They met somebody online, that person's asking for money, they're sending it to them, but also taking money in because they say, oh, my uncle's gonna send you $700. Can you just pop it in the mail and pass it on to my other cousin because I'm not in the country? But there are more complex methods of money mule recruitment that target younger audiences. A big one is work from home schemes that target people who are looking for jobs on social media. So if you are searching for jobs using something that is tracking your information, you may be presented with the type of ads that target you for these work from home schemes. So just something to be really careful of is if it's too good to be true, it probably is too good to really be true. So there are a lot of different ways that people get recruited into this, but essentially the money goes to a third party and they kick it on into a network of other people making transfers to obfuscate the source of the funds. So how does a business email compromise work? This is a pretty basic example. Essentially, you'd have an executive, they send out an email saying, hey, please transfer money from one place to another. A criminal actor intercepts or spoofs that executive's email, gains control to it, sends out those requests to employees with different routing details, and then the money ends up in a criminal controlled bank account. So something like this, the two most common methods we see are data breaches or like a similar email address and somebody is just not aware. But getting access to where someone works, who their work relationships are, those are all critical parts of that process. So even when there is a more sophisticated cyber intrusion, we do generally see a lot of social engineering that accompanies this kind of scheme. However, one thing that is important to see here is that any different element of a supply chain or a money transfer chain could be infiltrated. So in this example, it's just an executive to employee, but if you had an employee talking to suppliers or distributors or customers, those areas could be targeted as well. So a lot of people on the customer end can also be subjects of business email compromise if the credentials of the company can be secured. So what are some of the vectors? Targeted research is a big one. A lot of people put up their business information on social media. Things like realty.com is a really common area where people will look for information that leads them to identities that they can either co-opt or infiltrate. Big caveat here is don't put anything on social media you don't want anyone to have, and really critically, sometimes that means look at the vulnerabilities that are presented by the information you're putting on social media. If the CEO of your company lists his email on a LinkedIn profile, that is a really, really, really big vulnerability. So there are, like I look around this room, a lot of you probably know that. People in my generation, a lot of us didn't until we learned the hard way by experiencing some of these targeted attacks. Another vector would be cybersecurity. So talk about use of tools like spyware and keyloggers. These are far less common, but they are something to be aware of, and generally they would be used and coupled with that social engineering element, as I already said. So what are some of the countermeasures? Really look at who you're communicating with. This is one example of a school district that was targeted, and these are all of the email addresses that were used to communicate with people related to the business email compromise. So just, they look very similar, right? And people were not looking up at who the email was actually from. So if someone receives something asking for a wire transfer, or for a wire transfer to be sent, it's really worth doing the extra digging. I'm sure a lot of you guys know how to look at the full header information to verify that something was sent. That's something I do, and people think I'm absolutely crazy, but your basic email address can be spoofed. So being able to identify, oh, hey, that Gmail account doesn't actually go back to a Gmail IP address, that can be a really key tool to helping you identify some of these. And as I said, these schemes really rely on trust. So some of the common things that will show up in the emails are the use of authority, a requirement for secrecy between you and the business owner. I'll let you guys read that, but really there are common themes, and a lot of these deviate from the general patterns we see in normal communication. When I talk to my boss, he doesn't usually say, I'm your boss and I'm ordering you to do this, and also keep it secret and don't tell anybody, don't even talk to me about it, right? So just really being aware of the things that are unusual, and then when that comes up, go out and verify. Those are the things that we recommend to really kind of keep people safe. Another criminal process that we see very regularly is ransomware. The FBI is the lead agency when it comes to ransomware investigations, and these are incredibly complex because each different office would be overloaded if we just dealt with any ransomware request that comes through our door. So the way the FBI works is every different cyber squad develops a specific expertise, and if someone in Western Mass gets hit with a ransomware, I go out, I collect all the information they have, and then I route it off to the office that is best able to deal with that because of their expertise in that ransomware. One of the things that means is we constantly have to stay ahead of the threat. There are new ransomware showing up every day, and we constantly need to be adding to our capabilities, to our knowledge base, working with our public partners who maintain active research and awareness of the development of those ransomwares, and really working hard to make sure that we're not just dealing with what we know how to do, but we're looking ahead 6 months, 2 years, and see the direction these things are going so that when somebody does get hit with an attack, we can work with them the best way possible to help them resolve that. So ransomware process, I'm going to run right through this one. Essentially, you have installation, it contacts the server, encrypts the information on the server, and then you receive an extortion demand to get that information back. There are some general things we do to ask people to protect their systems, which also, forgive the spelling error on here. We focus on awareness and training, stuff like this today. You guys are a significantly more educated audience than a lot of the businesses we talk to. A lot of the interest groups that are specifically targeted by this have no concept of what to do when they get hit by a ransomware demand because they never thought it could happen to them, which is why they're not following the strict security protocols they should be. Then basic things like keeping patches updated, setting antivirus and anti-malware to automatic updates. One important thing on this slide is the principle of least privilege, so only giving users access to the privileges they need to do their job. We have that in the FBI. It is incredibly frustrating. Can't tell you how many times I'm like, oh, I want to run this on my computer, and I can't, and I have to get permission from somebody in Washington, D.C., and it takes 3 days. But it's one of the ways that we keep our systems safe, and it's a general recommendation we'd use when it comes to software policies and procedures. Also, having robust policies and procedures are important, and our most successful partners we see are the ones who not only trained their employees across all levels on those policies and procedures, but also work with employees on all levels to make it clear what their needs are and what vulnerabilities may exist in the course of someone doing their day-to-day job. Backups are critical. Often the best way to get information is to have a backup. The FBI does not generally recommend paying a ransom, and we'll talk about why on the next slide. But really, the easiest recovery is have that information accessible somewhere else. However, if you are the victim of a ransomware attack, know anyone who is, contact the FBI. We do consult on processes to go through. There are a lot of misconceptions about what we do. Our cyber team won't swoop in, take over all your servers. No. We'll walk you through how to work to resolve the issue. We will treat companies like victims. We do things like protect intellectual property. We are not in the business of doing all the crazy cyber things that they see on TV. We look for real life resolutions to real life problems that get businesses back up and functioning and protect customer and individuals' data. All right, so what to do if infected? Isolate the infected computer. We do not advocate paying because it emboldens an adversary. Many victims who pay malware, ransomware attacks end up being attacked again. That's just the way the business works. If I'm a bad guy and that guy paid me, I'm going to tell another bad guy, or I'm just going to get a different type of ransomware and hit him again. It also can be used to fund illicit activity. I talked a little bit earlier about how we see a lot of overlap on the criminal and national security side. Once that money is out of your account, you don't know if it's enriching some guy in the Philippines who's going to go buy a yacht, or if it's funding a terrorist attack that's going to target US soldiers overseas. We see terrorist organizations very commonly using cybersecurity vectors to fund their activities. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about the national security side of things. I'm going to really tear through these, but I got to provide a definition, and then the caveat is when we're talking about advanced persistent threats, any of the cybersecurity activities that are used by criminals could also be used by these persistent threats. So what are they? Stealthy and continuous computer hacking processes orchestrated by person-to-person targeting a specific entity. What we really mean when we say this is that nation-state actors that have incredibly sophisticated cybersecurity apparatuses conducting long-term actions against targets in the United States or with our allies. So you've heard some really interesting information about disinformation campaigns. That would absolutely be an advanced persistent threat. Ransomware attacks on hospital systems and critical infrastructure that occur system after system, year after year, those are advanced persistent threats. So what's going on? State sponsors' adversaries are pursuing sensitive information and proprietary knowledges, which is why a lot of businesses specifically are targeted, because those businesses with contracts with in sensitive areas of the US government keep information that our adversaries want on their servers. Then they are taking advantage of trust, just like the other things we've seen before. Trusted email addresses, trusted code or protocols. Those elements are attacked specifically outside of the use of the companies. Companies then make use of them, their systems are infected, and the cybersecurity process is defeated, and then that group is victimized. And all of that information, all of the personal details for other people who can be targeted individually, they are collected by the adversary, and the process repeats. What is their purpose? That's a question that was asked earlier. The truth is, the purpose of a cybersecurity threat actor is as varied as the actors themselves. I think a really important thing to consider, especially when it comes to something like disinformation, is that conflict creates additional vulnerabilities. So if I want to make money off of cybersecurity vulnerabilities, I'm going to create conflict within an organization I want to target so that more vulnerabilities are created and I have better opportunities to target more people within that organization. So when you're thinking about any of these, the more conflict, the more instability that's caused, the more opportunities for profit, for exploitation, for spying and gathering of sensitive information, the more that's created by these vulnerabilities. So some major things there: intelligence collection, acquisition information, creating future opportunities, what I'm talking about with things like the disinformation, and targeting of critical infrastructure. Our adversaries are actively targeting things like hospital systems, power plants, things that we rely on in order to be able to do as much damage to the American public as possible. So in the last couple minutes, who's doing it? The most common actors are China, North Korea, Iran, and Russia. The FBI works very, very hard to stay ahead of the patterns that we see with those threat actors, but it is very common that these are the threat actors behind different issues. Couple of quick case studies. I don't know how many of you remember, but back in 2014, a hacking group from North Korea targeted a movie at Sony called The Dictator, and they released it early, doing significant amounts of financial damage to that company. This is a really great example of a foreign threat actor and also a form of hacktivism, but also a form of profit. So you can see how a criminal actor, a hacktivist, a foreign nation state might all be one and the same. It really just depends on what the vulnerability they're exploiting is and what their end goal is. Oh, did I switch back? Sorry. Then also in 2016, the Democratic National Committee emails were leaked on WikiLeaks. Throughout a rigorous investigation, it was determined that the cause of this breach was the Russian government, and the purpose was to help Trump win an election. The key here is not a political takeaway of one side or the other. It is that conflict created vulnerability. The Russian government saw a chance to create conflict in our political system, erode the trust in it, and also create future opportunities to act that would degrade our security as a country. So I think I've got a couple minutes for questions. I know that was really fast and really high level. Feel free to ask me anything you need, though. All right, first.
I've got a question about security clearances.
Sure.
So I've got a background in law enforcement. Now finishing up a cybersecurity degree.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the jobs that would kind of be in my track do want a security clearance, but of course no one wants to sponsor you for your security clearance. Do you have any advice for beginning that process?
There's no way to do it outside of a sponsor. So that's, I mean, that's just going to be the reality of it. FBI.gov/jobs does have some information about the security clearance process because we do a good amount of those for anyone who needs it, whether it's a White House staffer or a federal judge or a private contractor. But the truth of the matter is you need to be sponsored. You can't apply independently for a security clearance. It just doesn't work like that. So. Yeah.
My question actually has to do with all three presenters, but
sure.
I'm targeting you. Would any of you have any words of suggestions for every one of us in this room, given the most recent presentation with nation state actors and the FBI's role with national security, for us to start to think about how can we be more diplomatic in our approach in cybersecurity? Because cyber diplomacy is already perhaps a thing, maybe becoming more of a thing, but each of us here may be interested as cyber defenders to shape our careers or our interests in whatever little part we play in that direction.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I'd love to talk to you about it offline a little more. Unfortunately, in my role as an FBI agent, I have to focus on specific violations of criminal law. So the larger picture isn't something I can focus on, and I definitely can't comment on it because I'm down here and the people who could are way up here, right? But I do think that education and engagement in the cybersecurity field, especially considering things like you heard about earlier, like intersectionality of identity, those places are a great way to start to have conversations, build understanding, and develop a common cause that lets people move forward to create collaborative partnerships. I think the FBI has InfraGard, which we work with private businesses on cybersecurity issues. It's a great model that we use as the federal government, engaging with people who can take that a step further and take actions that aren't representative of the federal government. And so I think really just developing that understanding that even in a field like cybersecurity, which a lot of people see as ones and zeros, you have to have a whole person approach. And we look at that too when we do our recruiting, because who someone is and how they think and how they feel is as important to whether they would be a successful FBI agent or support the FBI's mission as do they check some boxes and have they had the right education. So, all right.
There's also a number of cyber policy tracks at DEF CON where some of that collaboration is happening that you don't see at other events. I'm not sure if you've been, but I would recommend that as well.
One last question.
Great. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Jonathan. I'm a student. I just had a small, really basic question.
Sure.
So after listening to what you presented, I was just wondering, since human error seems to be one of the key components, and you can't control or watch what people are doing constantly, is there any way to ensure a higher protection rate as technology grows and the amount of ways that we access it increase? Because there's so many things going on, like with Change Healthcare, with the whole ransomware situation. So I'm just wondering.
Sure, I think there are other experts in the room who could probably answer that better than I could. Part of the reason is because the FBI can't give legal advice or advice on policies. The last thing I'd want is for you to go be like, hey, the FBI said this is a foolproof way and then boom, get hit with a ransomware attack, and then, oh no. So I think that is something that is a community level problem when it comes to cybersecurity. Just like we try to stay ahead of the threat to disrupt threat actors and deal with investigations after the fact, the cybersecurity community really does drive the innovation in the field. And the truth is, we model a lot of our responses and our tools and methods after successful paradigms that we see working elsewhere. So I guess my best advice is work hard to innovate and collaborate with your partners in the field. And the truth is, we'll probably end up following your lead in a lot of ways. So,
thank you for your time.
My name is Jess Garcia. I know we just had another conversation before Casey here, but I lead the Identity and Access Management program at Otis Elevator.
Hello, I'm Jackson Perez. I am a system administrator at Tech Square. We do contracting for different universities.
Hello, I'm Michael O'Valley. I'm an information risk consultant at MassMutual, working with primarily blue team names.
Michael Buckley, also working with Mike LaValle as a risk consultant for MassMutual.
All right, so the first question, Jackson, you're going to kick us off, is what inspired you to pursue a career in cybersecurity? That's part one. And part two is how did your educational experience at STCC help you prepare for that?
Okay, so mostly when I grew up, I was a computer kid. I played a lot of computer games. So initially my thought was I'll just go and do information technology as my career. So I started that off, and then throughout STIC, I kind of veered away. I started off as mostly into cybersecurity, and then I met Candido, and I got into system administration and Linux and Unix and programming. And yeah, that's mostly how it all went for me.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And Mr. Buckley, or Michael Buckley, is going to also answer that same question and share his thoughts.
Yeah, sure. I also, like Jackson, just really enjoyed IT and technology. I was kind of nerdy, enjoyed playing around with computers. Particularly liked to see what I could break. I remember my father, when I was young, used to have like time controls on my computer, so I couldn't access it after like 6 p.m. at night. It'd be fun to try and figure out ways to get around that. When I came to STIC, I just wanted to do something in IT. I had no idea what it was. Ended up landing in computer science because it seemed computery and sciencey. After a couple of semesters of programming, I realized I don't like writing code very much, but I do still like breaking things. After talking to a couple of different professors, I realized that infrastructure and cyber was a bit more my grasp, and had a couple of classes that felt them out. Unix, especially with Candido, was a huge eye-opener for me, and just learning so much about it. It really drove a lot of my love for the field.
All right, thank you for sharing that. So the next question, and Mike LaValle and Jessica are going to answer. And the second question is, during your studies, what was the most fascinating or eye-opening discovery you made about the field of cybersecurity that you feel people should know about? Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so I think one of the most fascinating or eye-opening discoveries that I found being in the field is open source intelligence. The amount of information you can find out about a given person just by simply looking them up online and finding the different forms of information about them it's spectacular. And that goes in combination with social engineering, and it's like a 1-2 punch for getting people to believe you if you're a threat actor. So definitely one of the most eye-opening discoveries I've made in the field.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Michael, you hit it on the head there. It never ceases to amaze me how much it's not necessarily understood how much about us is out there on the internet, and back to what we were talking about earlier, and how much, how easy it becomes to just make a phone call and try and take over somebody's account. On the other side, I really liked this question because one of the things that I think that folks might think when they think of cybersecurity careers are, well, I have to have like a computer science degree or something that involves being able to code, or having experience with Unix or Linux, or some of these systematic experiences. I would say one of the biggest findings for me, and this was a long time ago, but it still holds true, is that there are so many different jobs in cybersecurity. So if you're one of those people like me that does not excel in, here on the panel even, does not excel in or find passion in coding or programming, but still might find some excitement in cybersecurity, like we hear here today. That's okay. I always say there's a position for everybody. So.
All right, thank you for that.
Can I jump in real quick?
Please, do so.
Along those lines, you've also mentioned that people come from all different backgrounds. I did not have an IT background previous to STIC at all. My biggest resume selling point as a 32-year-old individual starting out my career is my years of customer service background. Because being able to show an employer my customer service abilities with talking about the victims that we end up interacting with has been hugely beneficial. I've been complimented over and over again by my ability to send a really nicely worded email telling somebody how they screwed up.
Thank you for that. And you actually lead into our third question, which is a recent grad entering the cybersecurity workforce. What do you see as the most significant challenges and opportunities? And I do want to share that 3 of the panelists just graduated last May, actually 2 last May and 1 in January. So they are very recent in building their career. So we'd like you to share that. Yes, I think we should. So Michael, that's for you. Okay.
Most significant challenges and opportunities
facing
the industry.
What would you like to share?
It has really amazed me how much social engineering really does impact the industry. It's been harped on by every single panelist and every single speaker that we've had up here today, and it will be harped on all through your school and education into cybersecurity. But as the panels showed, 85% of attack vectors come from social engineering in some way, shape, or form.
And can you also share, whoever wants to answer this one, you didn't jump right into cybersecurity. You took a path through some internships to get to where you are. So
yes.
Anyone who wants to jump in on that, we appreciate your feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. Through the relationships that I was able to build at STIC with my professors and fellow students, and working really hard to achieve the grades and understand the lessons that I did, I was able to be offered a couple of different internships. I started out at the MGHPCC up in Holyoke, which is a big data center which supports a lot of the largest research colleges, and their supercomputers are all based out of that facility.
Such as Harvard, MIT, you've heard of those schools, I'm sure? So yes. They got to work on their servers, so.
Yeah.
Actually, all 3 of you work there, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. So Jackson, you got number 4, which is throughout your journey, who have been your most influential mentors and role models, and how have they molded you to get you where you are now?
Okay, I would definitely say my professors. Jason's right there. He taught me networking. It was a great experience. I think at STIC, the professors really made the classes fun and enjoying. And we were Zoom. We were strictly Zoom. I didn't even meet Brian in person until probably a year into knowing him, but I felt like I knew him very closely. I'd say that really guided my path into cybersecurity and system administration and working in technology altogether. I think if it was more boring and just slideshow after slideshow, I don't think I would have continued with it. I think I would have looked for a different path or something like that. So definitely my professors are one to thank for that.
And can you share what happened last year? You and Tim Rudenko got to do something exciting twice.
Yeah, so Tim back there, he is the Unix supplemental instructor now, I believe. Before he was a Python supplemental instructor and I was Unix. And we got to go to PyCon. We got to do a bunch of different opportunities. Also, just to touch on it real quick, if you are a student, I would say my best advice is take every opportunity you can get. I took, I know we saw Maxwell Faithy here, yep. I did a mentorship program with him where I got to go to Lincoln Laboratory, MIT, and meet with Mark Zisman, who showed me all around the ropes. I took every opportunity Candido presented me, and just all together, just take everything you can. It's really worth it.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And Mike LaValle, you got number 5, and Jess, you got question number 6, and then we're going to open it up to the audience. So Michael, looking back as a student and now as an industry professional, what advice would you give to individuals considering a career or starting in cybersecurity?
Yeah, so I guess this is more of a answer for IT in general. You know, when you go into cybersecurity specifically, you know, the amount of information that's out there and the amount of knowledge you need to obtain to be proficient at your job can be kind of overwhelming, because there's so much to know, and you feel like you might have to know it very quickly. The one thing that I've taken away is it's okay to not know everything, and everybody's going to specialize in different things, and that's how we come together as a team and get things done. So I would say just getting used to that feeling of you're never going to know as much as you feel like you should know to be comfortable, and that's okay. That's
all right, thank you. And a question, this one's for you, Jess, is being a woman in cybersecurity can be sometimes a rarity. So can you share your thoughts to people who feel like they're older or too young, or like a female or a diverse person, like what advice you would give them about this field?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's always important to remember, if there is not somebody that, you know, looks like you in a field, then it might be causing some imposter syndrome, because it happens to me quite often. It still happens sometimes. But I think I've seen it now as the opportunity, you know, if there's not somebody that's in my foot or that looks like me, or that's had my background, or, you know, that I can say, you know, oh wow, they've done this, so I can too, then make that path for yourself, because it's extremely hard to find, you know, folks that are in my shoes that I can relate to. But now I'm saying I'm paving the way and showing other people that you can absolutely do this, you know, and showing that you can, whether you're 90 years old, or, you know, just starting out, or, you know, you're a woman or a mom. You know, there is a place for you, and, you know, I have to tell myself 10 times a day, even being here today, like, you know, I deserve to be here today. But it's reminding yourself of that over and over and over again, because imposter syndrome does like to creep up, and it just likes to stay there until you really fight it off and, you know, kind of say, okay, go away. But it's just remembering that if you don't see somebody that looks like you out there doing it, then you're just going to be the first one to do it. And I think that's even more special.
In one class here, I think, Jackson, you were in it, we had 5 different languages, and we had a 75-year-old studying cybersecurity. So we take all, and we work with all, and we promote all. So we'd like to open it up to the audience. Any questions? Does anyone have any questions? Yes?
Yeah, I have a question about, like, I guess current threats to, like, you know, like authentication and like logging into like your accounts. And so in recent years, I've seen like the use of like 2-factor authentication move towards like, you know, using like an authenticator app, and then even like companies like PlayStation, I'm a gamer, they use like something called like a passkey. I forget how it works exactly. Do you in your experience, or like from what you know, like are there any current threats to those kind of methods? Do you see those becoming obsolete in like years as, you know, the technology becomes more sophisticated and criminals can, like, you know, go like circumvent those things? You know, any thoughts on that kind of thing? I know it's really hypothetical, but
I think give some thoughts, and then maybe someone you guys can fill me in here. But yeah, so passkeys and passwordless authentication, like your push apps, those are going to replace your kind of password and MFA experience today. So in the future, you know, instead of typing in a password and then saying, okay, let me text you to verify that it's actually you, you know, your experience is going to be, you know, either you have this passkey registered and you're using the passkey, so we're going to let you right in, or, you know, we have this passwordless experience where you can use this push app and you use your face, you know, to confirm that it's you. But it's certainly moving in that direction, and that is one of the ways that, you know, the industries alike are trying to get ahead of your typical password and multi-factor authentication challenges. So I don't know if you guys want to add anything.
Are any of you using Duo or something like that? So can you maybe share what that is for the audience?
Yeah, so the one thing I would say about 2-factor authentication is it is great, and it definitely is something everybody in this room should use. However, if somebody's able to steal your session, or through session hijacking, they can pretty much bypass the authentication part because you've already been granted a token. So as long as your session is loaded into the browser, you can almost act like the user, which is interesting. Not a lot of people know about that. So it's good to have two-factor authentication, but if somebody hijacks your session, then they can do anything with that token.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Over here.
I have one for Jackson. He was an SI for almost a year. So as another SI, I wanted to ask, has it affected your, or influenced your success in the future? And if so,
Maybe explain what an SI is.
Yeah, supplemental instructor is kind of like, I was a student at the time, but I would help Brian with a class that I've already taken. I literally took Unix 1, and then the next semester I was a Unix 1 SI. So all the material was still fresh in my head. And I could advocate for it all day, Brian knows, but I think the SI program is one of the greatest programs ever to happen to me, not just because I was one, but I attended every single SI session that there was. And I mean, I learned so much from it. Not only did I learn so much, but you build a community. I think these guys were definitely in some of the SI sessions. I know Tim was there. And you just build a community. Learning becomes, I don't want to say more fun, but it becomes a
more fun than when I'm teaching it?
More enjoyable experience overall when you have people to do it with and people that are interested in the same things as you. So the SI program, keep it forever, stick if you can, because it's great.
We are growing. I'm just curious, people in the audience, how many of you actually go to a class as an SI? All right, so a good number. So we're increasing that enrollment, classes with that. I think we have time for one more. Over here, yes.
Hey, this one's for Jessica. I'm actually a senior and I'm expecting and I have a child. So like, how do you balance like work life, but also being a mom, but staying on top of like, you know, not saying all men, you know, we're the default parent most of the time. So I'm like, it's hard to like keep up with everything cyber, but also be a parent. So I'm just like wondering what you do.
So you are me, literally, right? Years ago. So yeah, it was extremely hard. I think, you know, I tell people like, you know, I don't know what happened on Netflix for years, and that was a struggle for me because, you know, I like to keep up with that stuff, but I would dedicate, you know, I would set specific times after my daughter went to bed at night, you know, then 8 p.m. to 11 was my schoolwork time, and, you know, any breaks that I got during the workday, I was reviewing my schoolwork or, you know, doing some assignment or what have you, and I would literally have to dissect every little time in the day to find, but it's when you are a busy professional or expecting or a mother or, you know, a parent that's trying to do it all, you know, I kept telling myself, and I have a sign in my house that says where there's a will, there's a way, because it's you know, saying, okay, these things are important to me. How do I kind of find that time? But there was times where I had my daughter in one arm and laptop in the other, literally, and I was like, this is what we're doing. This is my only option here, because quitting isn't, you know. So I think, and maybe I'd love to talk to you further, you know, on some tips and tricks. But I think it's, for me, it all boiled down to kind of how can I make the most of a you know, 24-hour day, which feels impossible sometimes. So.
All right. Well, thank you to the panelists. Thank you for the questions. And one thing we're just going to leave you with is we have the professors from the Computer Information Technology. We have Wes Crouch over there. Where's Jason Ells? I saw him earlier. We have Andrew Collins here as well. And I will be here. If you have questions about our program, our degree, these panelists will be staying as well. Jess, we hope you stay, but we definitely want the CIT graduates to stay to talk to prospective students or anyone who may be interested in cybersecurity. So it is my pleasure to now introduce the president of STCC, Dr. John B. Cook, who will have our closing remarks.
Thank you, Brian. Good afternoon, everyone. For those new to the college, hope you have had a great afternoon. I believe today is the first day of spring. It's a little brisk out there. I tried to dress appropriately, but I hope you found the time worthwhile. Let me first share a few notes of thanks. Thank you to all of you, the participants, and certainly our panelists today. Thank you to the experts here for sharing your wisdom. And my thanks to so many of the students for your continued investment in what is truly a unique set of skills. To our partners at CyberTrust Massachusetts, I know we've got Megan Martinez and some of the team here, Thank you for the investments in our cyber centers of excellence that we're helping stand up, including the one here in Springfield, down at Union Station. And to our team here at the college, I want to offer gratitude to our CIO, Mary Kozlowskis, who's really helped move our college forward in important ways. And also, while the title of range manager doesn't really quite capture all of his work, I would like to thank Gene Kingsley for facilitation of the conference today. Thank you, Gene. I appreciate the opportunity to offer a few comments to close out what is an important gathering on an important subject that continues to have remarkable implications for people around the globe. We don't have to look any further than the current policy debate in the US Congress around TikTok. As the president of a technical community college, cybersecurity as a growing sector provides us with a tremendous opportunity given workforce demands, and you've gotten a great sense of that. While simultaneously, by the way, being an area institutionally that is of great concern for us. We live in this complicated space of, yes, bringing a focus to career pathways, and yet cybersecurity, for us too as a college, has that sort of low hum of unease that never really goes away given our need to prepare, function, defend, and operate. This is perhaps the paradox of our times. I shared with our faculty and staff back in January, there have been these technology upheavals that each time seem to raise questions of purpose, of ethics, and the impact on humanity. From the advent, and you'll forgive some of the references, of radio, to television, to the internet, and now with AI and virtual and augmented reality, the concern through all these evolutions has been in part about impact, and if it is in fact our ability to improve the lives of people. It really does kind of all sound hyperbolic at times. But by the way, don't let me fool anyone. While I can sprinkle into my own conversations terms like MFA and EDR and MDR, or ask a student how the red team, blue team exercise went candidly, you all know better than I do the types of skill building needed to work in cybersecurity. You all know better than I do the type of talent needed to help any industry when set against a world that has people, groups, and entities looking to exploit those vulnerabilities in the technology. And that's today, to say nothing of when you combine the Internet of Things with implications from quantum computing, what the next 15 years might look like. It's daunting, to be sure. And yet here's one outlook that can keep our feet on the ground. Certainly gives me a little bit of solace amidst all this. There's this futurist by the name of Bob Johansen. He wrote a book about new leadership literacies. And here's a quote from that book. Here's a small excerpt. He says, "The best way to lead in a disruptive world is to be very clear about where you're going. Tell a great story, and then be very flexible about how you bring that future to life. In a highly uncertain world, it's very easy for leaders to confuse clarity with certainty. Clarity with certainty. Many people, including many leaders, just aren't prepared for the speed and scale of disruption they'll be facing over the next decade. In this future world, simple will be good. Simplistic will be dangerous." And by the way, he wrote that pre-pandemic. Pre-pandemic. Simple will be good. Simplistic will be dangerous. So given the conference today on cybersecurity and the invitation to tell a great story and find the simple, let's see if I can land this plane here. What I know for certain is that community colleges here in Massachusetts are a great story. We're also an absolutely essential part of the future world of cyber. So simply stated, we are the most affordable and accessible avenue to higher education. And by the way, with Mass Reconnect, free community college for adults 25 or older, that's having a significant impact and inviting people to take a look at us. We have a scale across our 15 community colleges that is quietly understated, given total enrollment in Massachusetts is about 75,000 students. The diversity in our students is uniquely representative. At STIC, we're more than 50% students of color. And therefore, we carry an unparalleled connection to our local communities. Simply stated, it is at a community college like STIC where in our cybersecurity program, you will learn Python. In our computer science transfer program, you will take calculus as well as data structures and algorithms. And in our computer systems engineering program, you'll take courses with Linux and Cisco elements. And for all of our students, there's a learning opportunity in a cyber range and future work experiences to be had at a SOC. These are the building blocks for a vital cyber workforce. These are the foundational ways that community colleges are a clear part of that cybersecurity ecosystem. I really am excited about the future, as daunting as that might be. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope you had a great day.
President Cook said, thank you for coming today.